There's always been a revolving door between the government and corporations. Very lucrative jobs. Well, we have the latest updates. We now have Jonathan Van-Tam. You remember him from the lockdown days? One of the senior advisors to the government. So when it came to lockdown policies, public health, the jabs, and face nappies and everything else, he became quite famous during that period. Now, Jonathan Van-Tam, or JVT, has now left government, as we guys know, and he now has he's got a new gig. Guess where he's working? Oh yeah, Moderna. Yeah. Massive pharmaceutical company, and clearly there's no conflict of interest. Clearly that's absolutely normal behavior. Now, there are people on the political left who until yesterday they were against capitalism and corporations. Now they love them. Now they also were against big pharmaceuticals. Now they love the big pharma. They're now saying, well, no, this is a good thing. He's got expertise. They could use it. Yeah, it's inside information from the government. I mean, also you got the expertise for civil servants and bureaucrats. That's very different to having expertise for business and corporations. So, yeah, anyway, he's got the job. Well done, JVT, right? He's also got a knighthood for some reason for doing his job. During the lockdown days, he became Sir Jonathan Van-Tam. And the problem we have is that despite all the policies that the central government made, because of the advice they got from people like JVT and Chris Whitty, and of course many others. Now, some policies proactively harmful, some benefit of the doubt, mistakes, let's just say, just for the sake of the argument, mistakes that became harmful. Still, there's an inquiry going on. There's a massive inquiry about the lockdown days, which is completely nonsensical. Nobody's answered serious questions. Those responsible for the harm they've caused during that period, none of them have been answering serious questions. From Matt Hancock as Health Secretary to the Prime Minister to these senior advisors. The only thing that the inquiry focuses on is, you should have done lockdown sooner and harder, rather than how much these lockdown harms actually cause damage to the country in terms of the long-term consequences. Now, let's remember that the government bought 77 million Moderna jabs during that period in 2 batches. And obviously, it was still fewer than what they did with Pfizer and AstraZeneca, but it was still huge, 77 million, right? So there are all these connections and there are all these contracts and everything else that happened. And apparently, we should just be fine with this revolving door, the people from the inside government moving straight into either political jobs or corporations. This is actually normal culture, apparently. Now, let's not also forget that back in 2018, the Labour Party called for an overhaul of revolving door system of former government ministers and officials taking high-profile jobs. The Labour Party was also against it at the time. Now they seem very quiet because they like Jonathan Van-Tam and they're now in favour of Big Pharma. So, and they get a lot of money from big corporations now. The Labour Party that was supposed to be on the side of the working people, trade unions, working classes, all that's gone out of the window now. Big money is involved. So that's what we're dealing with. And now, today we also have a very, very special guest with us. We have Andrew Bridgen MP, who's going to join me now to talk about this story and get his reaction about the revolving door. Let's go to Andrew. Right, welcome to the show, Andrew Bridgen, one of the few freedom-loving members of Parliament. Andrew, let's talk about this revolving culture that we have in British politics, where you can be a member of Parliament or a faceless bureaucrat or whatever, and regardless of how you lose your job, you can still join a different gravy train. What's going on here?
Well, it's more of the same that we've seen, the influence of big pharmaceutical companies over the Department of Health. 84% of the medicines and healthcare regulatory agencies' budgets paid for by Big Pharma. We've seen that the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation, in their personal declaration of interest, declared over £1 billion of investments in Big Pharma. And the revolving door, Sir Jonathan Van-Tam, who got his knighthood alongside Whitty before we'd done even a review of our pandemic response performance, joining Moderna, no doubt on a huge salary. And Moderna have done very, very well out of this government. Rishi Sunak has given them contracts for the next 10 years for 150 million doses of vaccines that I don't know what we need them for and what they're going to be for, but I think it's fairly lucrative.
I mean, firstly, with the jabs themselves, they've finally made their own U-turn at the end recently, saying, "I know we paid for all these batches and everything else, but we're no longer going to give it to young and healthy people and children." Like, but you bought enough for everybody. That was the whole point of it. You wasted our money, and now you're learning from mistakes. So that's one issue. But also, when it comes to, you mentioned something very interesting about Jonathan Van-Tam and all these people, and including Matt Hancock and many others who made decisions. They still haven't answered serious questions about the lockdown harms and all these decisions. And we do have this inquiry going on, but it's not really an inquiry that we want, because the inquiry is basically saying we should have done lockdown sooner and harder rather than actually looking into lockdown harms. So if you haven't gone through the investigation, how can you be rewarded? What's going on?
Well, they had to get out while the going was good. I mean, I don't think history is going to be very kind to the government for its pandemic response. And it won't be very kind to Whitty and Valence. Well, it certainly won't be if I'm writing it, Mahyar, and I'm hoping to be writing it. And of course, Moderna have done amazingly well out of a government. And when we think about their vaccine and booster, it's got a 1 in 662 severe adverse events. I'm very glad we're no longer going to be rolling it out to young, healthy people. And of course, Rishi Sunak, the fish rots from the head. I mean, he was the founding partner of an offshore tax-exempt fund in the Cayman Islands called Thelema, which apparently owns 12% of Moderna shares and invested many years ago. So it is shameless now, and they don't care what the optics look like, and none of them care what the public think. They really are. They are the elites. They're above all of that.
Yeah.
And it's going to be fascinating to find out where Hancock and Javid land, who are both leaving Parliament at the next election, and I think Van-Tam's set a sort of standard for them, which is pretty low in the public's eyes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, well, you talk about the elites, at least until, a few decades ago or quite recently, on paper, we used to have a political party that stood up for working people. The Labour Party used to be saying we stand up against establishment. That included capitalism, corporations, big pharma. Somehow, even the political left are now the lovers of big pharma, corporations. Without, they're looking into the actual regulations. They are the supporters of Pfizer, Moderna, all these companies. They're the same companies that they used to be against. And now, the Labour Party in 2018, they called for an overhaul of a system. The revolving door system, saying we need to look into it because it's not really healthy. Now they're not saying anything about Jonathan Van-Tam getting a new job. What's going on with the left?
Well, the left, they've signed up fully for this corporate stakeholder rubbish, which is actually crony capitalism.
Yeah.
It's crony capitalism at the top, and it's pretty ruthless capitalism for everyone lower down. I mean, I did have a conversation 8 months ago with my concerns about the vaccines, etc., with a very senior Labour MP who's on their front bench, and he was quite open about it. He said, "We're not taking on big pharma." Thank you very much, Andrew.
I mean, yeah, they quite recently came out, Starmer, saying we are going after, well, not after, we're going for the big business support, and they're having their business conferences and everything else. So there's no need for a Tory party when the Labour Party is already doing the business corporations and, as you said, stakeholder kind of crony capitalism. What is the difference between the current Tory leadership and Labour leadership?
Well, there's no difference. In fact, we've had a sort of role reversal. Everything appears to be inverted. You've got men who can be women and women who can be men. You've got the Conservative Party acting like the Labour Party. I mean, we always, in politics, we always relied on the Labour Party to bankrupt the country.
Yeah.
And it would appear that the Conservative Party now have made them redundant. And when you're in a position where the Labour opposition is trusted more on tax than the Conservative government, I mean, you can tell that the whole world's been inverted.
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite interesting how the media are also very, not just silent on it, but they are quite celebratory about Jonathan Van-Tam, just like how they were about his knighthood. Nobody questioned, like, why is he getting a knighthood? Is it just for going to work, for doing his job. If you do something extra in life, then yes, you deserve honours and everything else. And actually, I know a couple of good members of parliament, including this guy called Andrew Bridgen. He doesn't have honours, but he needs more honours. But thank you so much.
It's always an honour to represent the good people of Northwest Leicestershire.
There we go. That's how you do it. Thank you so much, Andrew, for coming on the show. I'm Mahyar Tousi, and we are the media.